Have you ever wondered if everything around you is real, or if perhaps, just perhaps, you are the only person who truly exists? This might sound like a strange idea, something from a science fiction film, but it is a very old philosophical puzzle. This puzzle has a name: Solipsism. It's a fascinating, and for some, a slightly unsettling thought. Solipsism suggests that only your own mind, your own consciousness, is sure to exist. Everything else, the world, other people, even the stars in the sky, might not be as real as you think. It is a deep question about what we can truly know. The word solipsism itself gives us a big clue about its meaning. It comes from two Latin words. Solus means alone and ipse means self. So put them together and you get something like self alone, or only the self. The term was first used much later than the ideas it describes, probably in the 19th century. But the core thought that the individual self is the only thing one can be sure of has been around for a very long time. Understanding the word helps us grasp the central point of this philosophical position: the unique and solitary nature of one's own consciousness as the only undeniable reality. Why do philosophers bother with such an outlandish idea? Most people go about their day quite sure that their friends, family, and the world are real. Solipsism is not a popular belief system for daily life. However, it poses a serious challenge. It is surprisingly difficult to prove with absolute certainty that solipsism is false. How can you be completely sure that what you experience is not just a very elaborate dream or a creation of your own mind? This difficulty makes solipsism a persistent philosophical problem, a kind of ultimate skeptical challenge that tests the limits of our knowledge and our understanding of existence. So solipsism invites us to take a journey. It's a journey into the nature of reality, what it means to know something, and what the self truly is. It's not about convincing you that you are alone in the universe. Instead, it's about exploring the very foundations of your beliefs about the world. It makes us question our most basic assumptions. We usually think the world is out there, independent of us. Solipsism asks, what if it isn't? This journey can be a little dizzying, but it is also incredibly thought-provoking, pushing us to examine what we truly believe and why we believe it. The very heart of solipsism is a simple yet profound claim. It states that the only thing you can be absolutely certain of is the existence of your own mind. You know you have thoughts, you know you have feelings, you experience sensations like seeing colors or hearing sounds. This inner world of your consciousness is directly present to you. You cannot doubt that you're experiencing something, even if you doubt what that something is. This direct awareness of your own mental states is considered the bedrock of certainty for a solipsist. Everything else beyond your immediate consciousness is open to question. One classic way to understand this doubt is the dream argument. Think about the dreams you have at night. When you are dreaming, everything often feels completely real. You might be flying or talking to strange creatures or in familiar places doing unusual things. It is only when you wake up that you realize it was just a dream. So the question arises, how can you be absolutely certain that you are not dreaming right now? What if this very moment, reading these words, is part of an incredibly vivid and consistent dream? There seems to be no definitive test from within the experience to prove it isn't a dream. Another powerful thought experiment comes from the philosopher René Descartes, though he used it to find certainty, not to endorse solipsism. Imagine, he said, that there is a very powerful and cunning evil demon. This demon is devoting all its energy to deceiving you. It makes you see a world that isn't there. It makes you feel sensations that are not caused by real objects. It could even be tricking you about mathematical truths. How could you prove this demon doesn't exist and isn't fooling you about everything you perceive? It's a radical form of doubt about the external world, the world outside your mind. Therefore, the solipsist concludes, the only thing that escapes this web of doubt is your own awareness. You are aware of the doubt itself. You are aware of the thoughts. Even if an evil demon is deceiving you, you must exist to be deceived. Your internal world, your stream of consciousness, your thoughts and feelings, these are immediate and undeniable. Everything external to your mind, including the existence of other people as independent conscious beings, the physical world, even your own body as a physical object, becomes less certain. They are all, in a way, inferences or beliefs, not direct, undeniable knowledge, like your own consciousness. The Solipsism is not a single monolithic idea. Philosophers have found it useful to distinguish between different types or strengths of solipsistic claims. It's like a spicy dish. Some like it mild, some like it hot, and some just use a pinch for flavor. These distinctions help to clarify what a particular solipsist might actually be arguing. Thinking about these categories helps us understand the different ways one might approach the central problem of the self and the external world. It shows the flexibility and varying implications of the core solipsistic doubt. The strongest and perhaps most famous type is called metaphysical solipsism. Metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that deals with the fundamental nature of reality, existence, and being. So metaphysical solipsism makes a very bold claim about what is. It asserts that, as a matter of fact, only your mind exists. Everything else, the entire universe, every person you've ever met, every book you've read, is nothing more than a creation or projection of your own individual consciousness. There are no other minds, no independent physical world. This is a very radical and lonely position, suggesting you are literally the only being in existence. Then there is epistemological solipsism. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge. It asks how we know what we know and what counts as genuine knowledge. This form of solipsism is a bit softer. It doesn't necessarily say that other minds or an external world don't exist. Instead, it says that you cannot know for certain whether they exist. Perhaps they do, perhaps they don't. But because your only direct access is to your own mind, anything beyond that remains subject to doubt. You might believe in an external world, but you can't have absolute, undeniable proof. It is a statement about the limits of human knowledge rather than a statement about ultimate reality. Finally, there's methodological solipsism. This is not so much a belief about reality or knowledge, but rather a philosophical method or a starting point for inquiry. A philosopher might adopt methodological solipsism as a strategy. They might say, let's act as if only my mind is certain to exist and see what kind of knowledge we can build from that foundation. René Descartes used a similar approach. He doubted everything he could, arriving at "I think, therefore I am" as his certain starting point. The goal here isn't to conclude that you are alone, but to ensure that your philosophical system is built on the most secure possible ground. The core anxieties that lead to solipsism are not unique to modern times. Philosophers throughout history have wrestled with questions about reality, knowledge, and the self. Even in ancient Greece, we find thinkers who expressed profound skepticism. The sophist philosopher Gorgias, who lived in the 5th century BCE, is famous for a three-part argument that has solipsistic echoes. He argued that firstly, nothing exists. Secondly, even if something did exist, we could not know it. And thirdly, even if we could know it, we could not communicate our knowledge to others. This is an extreme form of skepticism about reality and our ability to connect with it. Centuries later, the French philosopher René Descartes, who lived from 1596 to 1650, embarked on a famous quest for certainty. He decided to doubt everything he possibly could: his senses, the existence of the physical world, even mathematical truths. He wondered if he was dreaming or being deceived by a malicious demon. However, Descartes found one thing he could not doubt: the fact that he was doubting, and if he was doubting, he must be thinking, and if he was thinking, he must exist. This led to his famous declaration, "Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am." For Descartes, this was a starting point to prove other things, not an embrace of solipsism. But it highlights the mind's unique certainty about itself. The Irish philosopher Bishop George Berkeley, who lived from 1685 to 1753, proposed a very interesting idea called idealism. Berkeley argued that material substance, the physical stuff that we think objects are made of, does not exist independently of minds. For something to exist, he said, it must be perceived. Esse est percipi, to be, is to be perceived. So a tree in a forest only exists if someone or some mind is perceiving it. This sounds like it could lead to solipsism. If only my mind is perceiving, then perhaps only what I perceive exists. Berkeley avoided this by saying that God is the ultimate perceiver, constantly perceiving everything, thus ensuring the continued existence of the world. Immanuel Kant, who lived from 1724 to 1804, a hugely influential German philosopher, grappled deeply with the challenges of skepticism. He was awakened from his dogmatic slumbers, as he put it, by the skeptical arguments of David Hume. Kant sought to find a way to secure our knowledge of an external world without falling into either naive realism or extreme skepticism. He made a crucial distinction between the world as it appears to us, phenomena, and the world as it is in itself, noumena, which we can never directly know. While Kant argued against solipsism, his philosophy acknowledged the active role of the mind in structuring our experience of reality, which is a fascinating point of connection. Imagine just for a moment that metaphysical solipsism is true. What would that mean for your experience of the world? If your mind is the only thing that genuinely exists, then everything you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell is, in essence, a creation of that mind. The vibrant colors of a rainbow, the complex taste of your favorite food, the feeling of the wind on your skin, all of these would be sensations generated internally. The entire universe, from the smallest atom to the grandest galaxy, would be a vast and intricate tapestry woven from the fabric of your own consciousness. It's a staggering thought to consider. What about other people? In a solipsistic reality, the individuals you interact with every day, your family, friends, colleagues, even strangers on the street, would not be independent conscious beings with their own thoughts and feelings. They would be more like characters in a very elaborate and convincing dream or a story that your mind is telling itself. Their laughter, their tears, their conversations, their hopes and fears would all be manifestations of your own mental activity. You would be the sole author, director, and audience of the entire human drama. This can feel like a very lonely and unsettling perspective. The sheer complexity and consistency of the world might then seem like an incredible feat for a single mind to generate. Think about the laws of physics, the intricacies of biology, the vastness of history, the depth of art and music. Could one individual consciousness truly invent all of that detail, all of that coherence? Some might argue that this very complexity is evidence against solipsism. Others might counter that the power of a solitary creative mind is underestimated, or that the consistency is itself part of the mind's construction. It is a puzzle with no easy answer if one takes the solipsistic premise seriously. This perspective also raises questions about your own identity and creativity. If the world is your mental construct, then every hero and every villain, every beautiful poem and every jarring noise originates from within you. You are, in a sense, responsible for everything. This could be seen as a source of ultimate creative power, or perhaps an overwhelming burden. The solipsist's world is a lonely one, but it's also a world in which the self is, in a very literal sense, the creator of all it surveys. It is a world entirely of one's own making, for better or for worse. While solipsism, as a philosophical doctrine, focuses on the individual mind being the sole reality, some of its themes find surprising echoes in various mystical and spiritual traditions around the world. These traditions often speak about the ultimate nature of reality being a single, unified consciousness or a universal spirit. They suggest that the everyday world we perceive, with its multitude of separate things and beings, might not be the fundamental truth. Instead, there's a deeper, all-encompassing oneness that underlies everything. This is not quite the same as individual solipsism, but there are interesting points of contact. In these spiritual viewpoints, the individual self, the ego that says, "I am me, separate from you," is often considered to be an illusion, or at least a limited perspective. The real self, with a capital S, is identified with this universal consciousness. So instead of only my personal mind exists, it's more like only the one mind exists, and I am part of that. This is a profound shift in perspective. It takes the idea of a single reality being mental or conscious, but it universalizes it rather than localizing it to one person's brain or private experience. For instance, in some schools of Hindu philosophy, particularly Advaita Vedanta, there is the concept of Brahman. Brahman is described as the ultimate unchanging reality, the single, infinite, and indivisible consciousness that is the ground of all being. The individual soul, or Atman, is said to be identical to Brahman. The perceived world of multiplicity and separateness is often described as Maya, a kind of illusion or cosmic play that veils the true nature of reality. This idea of the world as an illusion created by a greater consciousness has a superficial resemblance to solipsistic thought. However, there's a crucial difference in the aim and outcome. Philosophical solipsism, especially in its starkest form, can lead to a sense of isolation and detachment from a world that isn't real. Mystical traditions, on the other hand, usually aim for the opposite. The goal is not to affirm the solitary existence of the individual ego, but to transcend it. By realizing the illusory nature of the separate self, the spiritual seeker hopes to achieve a state of unity, interconnectedness, and liberation. So, while the words might sometimes sound similar, the spiritual paths generally lead away from loneliness towards a profound sense of belonging to the whole. The age-old questions raised by solipsism haven't disappeared in our modern, technologically advanced world. In fact, they have found new and fascinating expressions, particularly in popular culture and even in some scientific discussions. The idea that our perceived reality might not be the true reality is a staple of science fiction. We see it in stories about virtual worlds, advanced illusions, and realities constructed by powerful artificial intelligences. These narratives tap into the same fundamental doubts that solipsism explores. Can we trust what our senses tell us about the world around us? One prominent modern idea that resonates with solipsistic themes is the simulation hypothesis. This hypothesis suggests that our entire universe and everything in it might be an incredibly sophisticated computer simulation created by a more advanced civilization. Think of it as a highly advanced video game, and we are characters within it. If this were true, then the world we experience would be real within the context of the simulation, but it wouldn't be the ultimate, fundamental reality. It's a technologically updated version of Descartes' evil demon or the brain in a vat thought experiment. In such a simulated reality, the status of other people becomes an interesting question. Are they also conscious beings like you, fellow participants in the simulation? Or are they perhaps non-player characters, sophisticated programs designed to interact with you and make the simulation convincing, but without any genuine inner experience of their own? If they are non-player characters, then from your perspective it might feel very much like a solipsistic world, where you are the only truly conscious entity surrounded by complex but ultimately mindless automata. This isn't strictly solipsism unless only you are the one being simulated with consciousness. Films and books often explore these mind-bending concepts. Movies like The Matrix directly depict a world where humans live in a simulated reality, unaware that their true bodies are being used as an energy source. Inception delves into dreams within dreams, blurring the lines between what is real and what is constructed by the mind. These stories, while fictional, do an excellent job of popularizing the core questions of solipsism. What is real? How can we know? Is our experience genuine, or is it some form of elaborate construction? They make these ancient philosophical puzzles feel immediate and relevant to our contemporary lives. Most people, when they first hear about solipsism, probably don't rush to embrace it as their personal philosophy. The idea that you are the only conscious being in the universe and that everyone and everything else is a figment of your imagination can seem absurd, deeply unsettling, and profoundly lonely. It runs counter to our everyday experiences of interacting with a seemingly independent world and other apparently conscious individuals. So if it's not a practical way to live, why do philosophers and thinkers continue to discuss and debate solipsism? What is its value? The importance of solipsism lies not in its truth as a description of reality, but in its power as a philosophical challenge. It forces us to think very carefully about some of our most fundamental concepts: knowledge, reality, certainty, and the self. Solipsism represents an extreme form of skepticism. Skepticism in philosophy is the practice of questioning or doubting claims to knowledge. By pushing skepticism to its absolute limit, questioning everything except one's own immediate consciousness, solipsism helps us to see where the boundaries of our certainty truly lie. It compels us to examine the reasons, or lack thereof, for our deeply held beliefs about the existence of an external world and the presence of other minds. We usually take these things for granted. We assume the chair we sit on is real and the friend we talk to has their own thoughts and feelings. Solipsism acts like a philosophical stress test for these assumptions. It asks, what is your evidence? Can you provide an absolutely undeniable proof that you are not the only mind? This process of examination can strengthen our understanding of why we believe what we believe, even if we ultimately reject the solipsistic conclusion. Furthermore, solipsism highlights the profoundly subjective nature of our individual experience. Each of us has a unique first-person perspective on the world. Your thoughts, feelings, and sensations are directly accessible to you in a way that they are not accessible to anyone else. No one else can feel your pain or think your thoughts in exactly the way you do. Solipsism takes this undeniable fact of subjective experience and pushes it to an extreme conclusion. Even if we don't agree with that conclusion, reflecting on solipsism can deepen our appreciation for the mystery and uniqueness of consciousness itself and the private inner world that each of us inhabits. Ultimately, while solipsism is a fascinating philosophical puzzle and a powerful skeptical tool, it is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to live as if it were true. Our entire lives, our societies, our relationships, and our sense of meaning are built upon the assumption that there is an external world and that other people are conscious beings with their own inner lives. To genuinely believe oneself to be the sole existing mind would lead to a profound and perhaps unlivable sense of isolation. Practicality and our innate social nature usually lead us to dismiss solipsism as a way of navigating the world. A closely related philosophical challenge is known as the problem of other minds. Even if we assume an external world exists, how can I be truly certain that other people have minds, consciousness, and subjective experiences similar to my own? I can observe their behavior, listen to their words, and see their expressions. These might strongly suggest they have inner lives, but I can never directly access their consciousness in the way I access my own. I infer their mental states based on analogy with myself. Solipsism takes this problem to its most extreme by denying the very existence of those other minds, not just our ability to know them. For most people, solipsism remains a thought experiment. It's a boundary condition, a philosophical what-if that helps us explore the limits of knowledge and the nature of existence. It's like a mental exercise that stretches our understanding and forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about what we can truly claim to know with absolute certainty. It serves as a stark reminder of the deep mysteries that still surround consciousness, perception, and the relationship between our minds and the world we inhabit. It's a question that, once encountered, can subtly change how one views their own certainties. So, even if we confidently set aside solipsism as a plausible account of reality for our day-to-day lives, it leaves us with a lingering and thought-provoking question. How much of what we take for granted about the world, about others, about ourselves, truly rests on solid, undeniable proof? And how much perhaps rests on a kind of pragmatic faith, a necessary assumption that allows us to live meaningful and connected lives? Solipsism, in its stark challenge, invites us to be a little more humble about the extent of our knowledge and a little more aware of the foundations upon which our understanding of reality is built.